Let's face it, fevers suck. They're terrible and they make you feel miserable, and we should make them go away at all possible costs, right? Wrong. Actually, the fever is an intelligent response of the body that should be supported and never suppressed. Support a fever? That sounds like crazy talk, but that is the perspective and practice of traditional herbalists across the world since the dawn of humans using plants as medicine. So let's take a dive into 5 of my favorite herbs for supporting the body through the febrile response. Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to The Plant Path. I'm your host, Sajah Popham, founder of the School of Evolutionary Herbalism and Natura Sophia Spagyrics. And thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy life to watch this video or listen to the podcast. I do really appreciate it. Before I get into the main content, though, I just want to mention that I know there's a lot of you that watch and listen that are not subscribed. So please, if you don't mind, take a moment, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It really does help support the channel so that we can continue to publish free content to the herbal community. Well, 2026, I don't know about you all, but it's been rugged this year as far as the febrile illness season. It's been pretty brutal, from influenza to COVID. A lot of people have had intense fevers this year that have been resilient and lingering, and convalescence has been taking quite some time. And so I wanted to take a little bit of time to share with you 5 of my favorite herbal remedies to consider for addressing febrile conditions. Now, the reason I mentioned this here too, I'm saying febrile conditions, not influenza or COVID, which you're probably not even allowed to talk about that anyways, but I mentioned that because regardless of the name of the virus or bacteria or whatever is causing the fever, we generally have a pretty consistent approach as herbalists to addressing the fever itself. And so what I'm going to share with you here really is applicable to any type of pathogen that is going to cause a fever. Now, before I get into my 5 favorite remedies, I need to make a little bit of a note here on suppression. As I said in the opening point, that it's very common to view the fever as an enemy, as the problem, whereas, and that should be, taken away at all costs, right? Whatever we do, just get the fever to go away. This oftentimes results in suppression, whether that be through a drug or through an herb. And for the most part, we don't want to suppress a fever. The fever is an intelligent response of the body. This is a vital response that is intelligent, that is important, that is actually functioning to heal your body and to resolve the infection more quickly. We generally don't want to suppress a fever unless it's getting dangerously high for a prolonged period of time. Rather, we as a vitalist herbalist want to support the fever. We want that fever to be more efficient. We want it to be more effective, and essentially want to speed up that febrile response so that it resolves more quickly. And the way that we do this in traditional herbalism is with a class of remedy we refer to as diaphoretics. Generally speaking, diaphoretics are herbs that are specifically used for the most part in febrile disease. And I like to kind of separate them into a couple different categories of diaphoretics. First, we have the category of stimulant diaphoretics. These are typically hot, warming, spicy, pungent, aromatic herbs that typically will warm the core and stimulate circulation, right? So we're trying to, with the stimulant diaphoretic, we're driving the blood up to the surface so that the internal heat can ultimately be vented out to the periphery. Anyone that's ever eaten really hot sauce, for example, you know the effect of a stimulant diaphoretic. If you eat something or take an herb that's really hot and spicy and it makes you sweat, that's a stimulant diaphoretic. Now, the other category is a relaxant diaphoretic, and this one is a little bit more nuanced. So what the relaxant diaphoretic does is it relaxes constriction at the surface, the pores, the capillary beds, circulation, and it's more opening up the surface of the body. We would call it a surface relieving remedy. It relieves tension at the surface. So it's like, if you think of your house, if you build a really big fire, you make the house really hot, everything's hot in the house, and then you open up the windows, you're going to release that heat. That's essentially what a relaxant diaphoretic does. Now, it's interesting, many of these herbs have other properties that generally support other symptoms that accompany a febrile disease. Some might be expectorant, some might be decongestant, some might be antimicrobial, antibacterial. These are also typically supportive. And one of the interesting things actually in Chinese medicine, they talk about the metal element rules the lungs and the skin. And it's very interesting that many of our diaphoretic herbs are also respiratory herbs. We see that with remedies like black cohosh, with lobelia. We see that with osha. We see that with thyme and oregano. Lots of herbs are expectorant as well as diaphoretic, which I think is very interesting, especially with something like influenza or even COVID. Usually you have fever with a cough. And so that's, I believe in the beauty and intelligent design of nature that these herbs are created in this way. Now, another quick note before I get into the first herb here is on the preparation of these herbs. Typically, when you are using herbs to address a fever, you want to prepare them as a hot tea. You want to do an infusion for kind of lighter plant parts, leaves, flowers, or a decoction for your more dense parts, say roots, barks, berries, seeds. Not a lot of berries are diaphoretic. Some seeds, but not that many. The point is hot tea. And this is because hot water in and of itself is diaphoretic. You drink hot enough water and it's going to make you sweat a little bit. But this is more of a delivery mechanism for these herbs. The heat of the tea helps those herbs to volatilize upwards and outwards to the surface of the body. Now, you can use tinctures. If you're in a pinch, you can use tinctures. I've done it many times and it works, in my opinion, just not as well as a hot tea. If I am using tinctures to address a febrile condition, typically what I'm doing is I'm putting those tinctures in hot water. I'm putting those tinctures in enough hot water, not just a little bit, but I'm putting it in, maybe 4 ounces of hot water, a couple ounces, and putting the tinctures in there and just having them take it all down right at once. That can be very useful as well. So with that, let's get into number 5 is elderflower. This would be Sambucus of many different species, whether that be Sambucus nigra, Sambucus, which is the black elderberry, blue, which would be the cerulean, Sambucus canadensis, even the red elderberry here that we have in the Pacific Northwest. You can't use the red berries, but you can use the flowers, which is Sambucus racemosa. But this is specifically the flower. I know there's always a lot of talk about elderberry, and everybody talks about it as a quote unquote antiviral. I think there's some issues with that terminology. But here we're specifically talking about elderflower. Okay, this is a classic fever remedy in traditional European herbalism. It is a very nice, relaxant diaphoretic where it's going to relax peripheral tension in the vasculature and in the pores to release internal heat. Now, one of the things that's very nice about elderflower is that the taste is relatively mild. This is something important to keep in mind because if you're taking it as a tea, if it if the tea tastes horrible, it's going to be hard for people to get it in, especially if you're working with children. And now I'm going to kind of talk about these remedies in a gradation from some of the milder ones that are good for kids to some of the stronger ones that we might want to reserve for adults. Elderflower is great remedy for children. It doesn't taste too bad, but it works very well for adults as well. Now, elderflower does have a degree of inhibition of viral replication, what many would call antiviral. I don't like that term antiviral because it leads to confusion. Because people see antiviral and then they immediately think that, oh, this herb is going to kill any virus. And that's just not the case. So I think it's important to distinguish what specific viruses an herb has been studied to be remedial for, and whether that study was, say, petri dish, if so, being in vitro, which means those compounds or the extract of the herb needs to come into direct contact with that virus to have its quote unquote antiviral effect, meaning it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a systemic effect in the whole body. So it's really important. Now, the research with elder is specifically for influenza, and this is really where we see it having the broadest range of application, but elderflower can be very helpful for another wide variety of febrile conditions, especially what are termed eruptive febrile conditions. These would be fevers that typically are accompanied by some sort of eruptive skin condition, right? We see this with chicken pox. We see this with measles. Anytime that there's an eruptive skin condition accompanying the fever, elderflower is very, very helpful to move that eruptive condition along more rapidly. Now, the flowers also have been studied to show that they inhibit a variety of bacteria from Salmonella, Staphylococcus, MRSA. So it can be used topically there for things like MRSA as a wash. It can be very helpful. So that's another useful consideration for elderflower. Now, again, just to note, elderberry is not notably diaphoretic. So don't think you can take elderberry syrup or an elderberry lozenge or something like that and have a diaphoretic effect. The berries are not diaphoretic. They're great remedy, don't get me wrong, but they are not diaphoretic. So this is specifically elderflower. Dosage, you're gonna, a teaspoon of the dried herb, ground up fine, is good for tea. Typically, we want to infuse it standard 20 to 30 minutes, at least 40 minutes is even better. That's generally where I kind of like to go with infusions. You can certainly use more, but it's not absolutely necessary. So that's elderflower, great traditional remedy used for fevers. Great for kids. Another one that I really love for kids is lemon balm. It's Melissa officinalis. Great remedy for children, especially because lemon balm to most kids tastes pretty good. It has a nice, light, lemony, citrusy flavor that most children find quite palatable. And like elderflower, lemon balm is a very nice relaxant diaphoretic. So it's going to help relax tension in the periphery. But what I also like about lemon balm here, especially for children, is because it's also a nervine. This means it's going to help gently calm the nervous system. It's going to promote overall relaxation in the nerves and the mind. It's going to support digestion. It's an aromatic mint, so it's going to really help as a carminative. Sometimes you get a fever, you get a little upset stomach, a little nausea. This can be very good for children. But I love that nervine property here with Melissa, especially for kids because, well, let's face it, when the little one's got a fever, they don't feel good. And sleep can certainly be disrupted here. So lemon balm is nice because it'll calm them down, kind of maybe tone down a little bit of the fussies, and help them slip into a nice state of sleep, which is very, very useful there. And of course, as we all know, sleep is an important medicine for the recovery here from febrile disease. Now, this is another herb that you go online, you look up lemon balm, you're almost guaranteed to see people talking about this herb as an quote unquote antiviral. So from my understanding, all of the research on lemon balm as a quote unquote antiviral is specifically on herpes virus. So this is specifically for genital herpes, for oral herpes, cold sores, things of that nature in a topical usage, okay? Not necessarily on influenza. From my understanding, there is no research that suggests lemon balm kills the flu virus, for example, nor does it kill COVID, from my understanding of it. There might be something out there I haven't seen, but I don't think lemon balm should be thought of as an antiviral for febrile type conditions, or really any type of viral infection aside from herpes. And that is topical usage, typically of the essential oil of Melissa, which is very, very expensive. And in all honesty, most mint family plants seem to have some degree of inhibitory effect on herpes in topical form. It just seems that for some reason, people really latched onto lemon balm as the quote unquote antiviral, or I might just say anti-herpes, for lack of a better term there. But other mint family plants have that property. So lemon balm, fantastic herb, great for kids. The nerving effect is one of the reasons why I wanted to mention it, because it's great for the kids. Again, a teaspoon of nicely ground lemon balm. More can certainly be used, but a teaspoon per cup is usually sufficient. Again, with most of these herbs, standard infusion, boiling water, cover it, let it steep, keep it warm while it's steeping. I think bare minimum 20-minute steeping. You don't steep herbal medicine like you do a cup of black tea, right? Black tea is but 3-5 minute steeping time. If you let it go too long, it just gets too astringent. Oftentimes, too many people apply that mindset to their herbs. Herbs, you got to infuse it for much longer. And optimally, that entire time of infusion, the water stays hot. This is important because once the water cools down, it's not really infusing quite as well. So it's good to infuse your herbs in, say, a thermos, or you can use one of those coffee pots that has a hot plate that'll keep your coffee warm. Those are a really great way to make herbal teas, actually, infusions and or decoctions, because it just keeps it right at that nice temperature for optimal infusion and decoction. So that's lemon balm, number 4. Number 3 is Yarrow, Achillea millefolium. We're slowly drifting into slightly stronger territory here with Yarrow. I absolutely love this herb. I remember when I was at Bastyr, when we were studying herbal actions and herbal properties, and we would go to our materia medica list, it was all by Latin name. And pretty much every action, I felt like, first herb there, Achillea millefolium, because it starts with an A and is followed by a C. So it's usually top of the list. And I was like, what is this herb? It seems like it just does everything. And it may not do everything, but it is very, very versatile. Achillea millefolium is great because you get this interesting mix of bitterness in the taste coupled with an aromatic nature. And so here with Yarrow, we have a little bit more of a stimulant diaphoretic, but also a little bit of a relaxant diaphoretic too. It's a little bit of both. And this is why I like it, because it's very versatile. Typically, when you're addressing, a little side note real quick, typically when you're addressing a fever, it goes through cycles. You got fever, you got chills. You got fever, you got chills. And your hypothalamus is raising and lowering the set point for your body temperature. And when the set point is high but hasn't quite reached it, you've got chills. When the set point reaches that heightened level, you feel hot and you've got noticeable fever, and then it drops back down and you feel cold again. And so typically when the set point's here and you're here and you feel cold, you use stimulant diaphoretics to get that fever up to temp more quickly. And then once you're up there, you feel hot, you're tense, maybe you got a headache, maybe your body starts to get really achy. You use those relaxant diaphoretics to vent the periphery and kind of help release that internal heat of the fever. Yarrow's useful here because you can really use it at any stage, in my opinion, and it's going to work. Now, when we're talking about using Achillea for kids, it can be a little bit bitter for them, right? Definitely on its own, most kids are going to have a really tough time taking it unless you've trained the palate of your children to be more acceptable to the bitter taste and just to herbs in general. My kids are champs. They'll take anything. They'll drink a cup of yarrow tea and they'll take it down because they know it's good for them. But most kids not used to that won't do it. So yarrow's great for children, but usually you want to combine it with something that tastes a little bit better. Maybe use yarrow in a slightly lesser amount. Just so you can get it in them. Otherwise, if you can't get them to take the herbs, then the herbs can't do anything. So putting it with a little bit of lemon balm, a little bit of elderflower can be useful. Very reliable diaphoretic though, very, very reliable. Secondary properties that I like about yarrow is that this is a very nice antimicrobial. It has antibacterial properties. It is notably inflammation modulating. So if you've got inflammation in the upper respiratory tract, inflammation in the lungs, general heat patterns as a whole, it can really help calm that down. It's a mild, bitter, and aromatic decongestant. So it can be very useful for upper sinus congestion, right? The stuffy nose, the excess mucus production. It can help open up the airways a little bit. So if there's a restrictive kind of cough, maybe a little bit of tension in the bronchioles, it can kind of help open up the airways a little bit. As a relaxant. Now, it's not nervine, so it's not going to calm you down, but it does have maybe a very slight spasmolytic or relaxant effect on the respiratory tract, as well as obviously it's doing that in the periphery with the pores and with the capillary beds. It's moving the blood, and in general, it just helps things move along. Yarrow is very, very useful here. Like the others that I mentioned, especially elderflower, yarrow is very great for aiding in the progression of eruptive febrile conditions. So again, if you see rashes, things that you'll see with measles or with chicken pox, things like that, yarrow is very, very useful there. And the other thing that I like about yarrow is even after the fever has subsided and you're kind of starting to feel a little bit better, yarrow can be very useful as a simple bitter tonic to get the digestive system back in order. Generally speaking, another slight side note here, it's good to fast during a fever. This is because when you eat during a fever, all your blood goes to your GI and vital force goes to the GI to digest food. During that time, your blood's not on the surface and it's not doing the job of the fever. So typically we fast a fever, we feed a cold. If you've been running a fever for a day or two, usually one of the signs that you're starting to feel better would be a return of the appetite, but that sometimes can be really hit or miss. Sometimes people's digestion is just off after a fever. And so the just simple bitter tonic effect of yarrow can be very useful to help get the digestive secretions going, get some of the, the bile and liver and gallbladder enzymes and digestive secretions, just get everything going again, can be very helpful. A teaspoon, again, is a sufficient dosage, though if you were to, say, make a simple 3-herb tea of elder, lemon balm, and yarrow, I would suggest maybe doing 1 part each of 1 part lemon balm, 1 part elderflower, and then maybe a half part of yarrow, just so the bitterness doesn't overpower it, especially if you're using it for children. Now, if you're using it for adults, you could just do equal parts, and that's no problem. But I do love yarrow, very, very versatile herb. Number 2, this remedy might surprise you. And I kind of chose it specifically because it's an herb that is not commonly thought of as an herb for fever, but I really like it and I've used it a lot and I find it to be very, very helpful. And that is black cohosh, Cimicifuga racemosa or Actea racemosa. I believe that's the more proper Latin name now, though I was taught Cimicifuga and my brain gets a little stuck there. But this is not just a woman's remedy. It's very common for people to think black cohosh, women's medicine. Yeah, it is, but it does a whole bunch of other stuff that's not just for women. So, nor is black cohosh necessarily a quote unquote estrogenic herb. It's one of the ways it's commonly thought of, or was commonly thought of. I'm not sure if a lot of people are still teaching it that way, but it was for a long time thought that this was like a phytoestrogen, and it doesn't appear to actually function that way. But we're not talking about women's health right now. We're talking about diaphoretics. So the main thing about black cohosh is that this is a spasmolytic. So it is, generally speaking, used for what in Chinese medicine we would refer to as wind conditions. Ayurveda we would refer to as excess vata. Or in Western herbalism, we would refer to it as an antispasmodic, right? It's being used for tension, constriction, spasm of smooth muscle, of skeletal muscle. It's nervine, mildly sedative, so it's going to calm the nervous system down. And that really gives us a key into what type of diaphoretic is, right? Which is that it's a relaxant diaphoretic. So in the same way, it's relaxing smooth muscle in the uterus for menstrual cramps, or the way it can ease bronchial tension in, say, asthmatic conditions, or it can even be used for ureter spasms in the case of a kidney stone. Black cohosh is also going to relax the smooth muscles that surround the arterioles, the capillaries, opening everything up on the surface to relieve that internal heat. Very, very good relaxant diaphoretic. Now, the other thing of why I love black cohosh is because as a spasmolytic remedy, this herb is commonly referred to as an anodyne or as an analgesic, meaning that it's pain relieving, but it's relieving pain specifically due to spasm in the muscles. Now, that can be applied to fever, because what's one of the main symptoms when people have a very high fever is pain, right? Your muscles get really achy, your bones can hurt. There's a variety of reasons that happens in a fever, but black cohosh is very specific for fever with tension and achy muscles. Very, very good. It's going to relax that musculoskeletal tension, help with some of the pain. It's mildly, it's nervine, mildly sedative. So it's, again, very nice for disrupted sleep due to fever, right? It can be very nice there. And the other thing that I really like it for here is headaches. It's not uncommon for high fever because all the blood is pushing up and out, that people can get these really, what we might think of as a wind heat headache. There's wind because there's constriction and tension, and heat because all the blood is up in the head, all the blood's pushing up, right? So you'll see red face, maybe even red bloodshot eyes. The head feels hot. The head feels like it's exploding outwards. Black cohosh being a cooling remedy, being a relaxant, can help relax all that constriction, relax the blood vessels, and really help to ease the headache that can accompany a fever. I got really sick right around my birthday, actually, this year. And man, I had a really high fever, 104, 105 for about 4 days. And it was tenacious, man. And I had a really, really bad headache. All my muscles hurt. My bones hurt. My head hurt. I couldn't sleep. It was rough. And I was doing a lot of my like standard diaphoretic stuff. And we're all our own worst herbalists, right? It's really hard to diagnose yourself. It's hard to select the right remedies for yourself, especially when you feel like crap. And so I'd kind of black cohosh had kind of slipped my mind until one evening I was laying and I was suffering. I was feeling really bad, and I just kind of prayed, like, please show me the remedy. And it was black cohosh. Just kind of popped into my head. It's like, oh, black cohosh. And we didn't have any of the bulk herb for making a decoction of it, but I did have some tincture. So I put some of the tincture in hot water, knocked it down, laid down, and just paid attention. And I could literally just feel everything open. I could feel my pores open. I could feel, it was like everything was just like cramped down and stuck. And the vital force wasn't moving. I could feel it stuck in my head. I could feel it stuck in my muscles. I could feel everything just was stuck. And then everything's just relaxed and opened up. And the headache went away. The muscles relaxed. I got calm and I fell right asleep. And that was the turning point for my fever. I woke up the next morning, still feeling like garbage, but way better than I had been feeling. So black cohosh, very, very good remedy. I don't really recommend this herb for kids. It's pretty strong. It tastes acrid, bitter and acrid. It's not a pleasant tasting herb. If you were to prepare it in a tea, I think a half teaspoon is a better range for this herb. It is a bit stronger. Too much black cohosh can actually sometimes give people a headache. It's almost like a proving. If you take too much of it, in a way, it produces the kind of headache that it treats at a proper, more sufficient dosage, which is a little lower. It's not a low dose herb per se. It's more of a moderate dose. So I drop it down a little bit. And again, tincture, it does work pretty well. I just would administer it in hot water, but I would reserve this one for the adults. It might be a little tough to give to the kids, and you don't want to upset any kids' tummies or anything like that. Moving on to our my number one favorite diaphoretic herb. I've used this herb a lot. I think it's the best. I love this herb. It's really, really great. Very, very useful. And that would be Boneset, Eupatorium perfoliatum. This is one of our great North American remedies, and traditionally used invariably for febrile conditions of all types. Okay. So, it is really bitter. Okay. So this one is not for kids. Very, very bitter, very relaxant. This is a very relaxant diaphoretic, very cooling, very drying energetically. But where I like Boneset is for the alternating chills and fever, right? You got the covers on because you're chilly, and you get really hot and you kick the covers off to cool off, then you get cold again, you put it on. That alternation chills and fever. That usually is an indication of wind. So wind can be tension, constriction, spasm, involuntary movements. It can also be alternating symptoms or symptoms that move around the body, but that alternating chills and fever is a sign of wind. It's also referred to as an intermittent fever. Very, very useful there. The other way Boneset specifically is very useful, as the name implies, Boneset is pain in the bones during fever. Very deep. It's a little different from a myalgia or a muscle pain. that black cohosh is a little more specific for. Boneset is for pain in the bones. In Chinese medicine, there's a really cool term for this called steaming bone syndrome. I feel like Chinese medicine has the most poetic ways of naming things, and that just, man, it really nails it. Steaming bone syndrome. That's a very key indication for using Boneset. And again, all these herbs can be used for all varieties of febrile conditions, but I think Boneset specifically, viral fever conditions, bacterial-based fever conditions, measles, influenza, COVID, dengue fever, West Nile virus, malarial fever. All of these types of conditions are very, very useful. Boneset is very useful for treating. It is intensely bitter, and in that way, it has I would say, a relatively strong antimicrobial, antibacterial. Whether it's antiviral or not is probably debatable, but it's funny. Like, to me, things that taste really, really bitter, in the same way it's not very comfortable in the environment of our mouth, I think it kind of creates an uncomfortable environment for pathogens in the body as well. So that's one way I kind of think of really bitter things, because very strongly bitter things do tend to, let's just say, have an effect on things like pathogenic fungi, bacteria, perhaps in some instances viruses as well. Boneset also appears to have some stimulant effects on the immune system. Paul Bergner talks about this, that there's some properties in Boneset that do seem to stimulate immunity. Now, I'm not sure if that's, if it's been said, it boosts certain T cells or B cells or things like that, or if that immunostimulation property is really just based on it being diaphoretic. I do find that it, just in my own sense of using this herb when I get sick, that it does feel like it kind of boosts the immune system in some way. But I don't have like a scientifically backed study to show exactly what it's doing. That's just experience speaking. The other thing about Boneset, very nice respiratory herb. It's interesting. It's stimulant expectorant, but it doesn't fit the pattern of most stimulant expectorants, which typically are hot, pungent, aromatic, resinous kind of herbs. There's Boneset is a bitter stimulant expectorant, and then there's Horehound also is a bitter stimulant expectorant. Really nice for clearing phlegm from the lungs, which of course coughs do tend to accompany febrile conditions, at least with a lot of the things that tend to go around, like influenza and COVID and things like that. And I would just backtrack there too and say black cohosh also has expectorant properties. Black cohosh is very good for that constricted cough, right? If the respiratory system is constricted, hard to breathe, spasmodic coughing fits, that's where black cohosh can be very, very nice. I really like it with things like wild cherry bark, wild lettuce, licorice. Very, very nice for those spasmodic coughs. An important note here on Boneset that large doses can be emetic. So, because it's just so insanely bitter. So be a little bit careful. Half a teaspoon is typically sufficient. Again, works best as a tea. It's really bitter, so it's hard for people to get down. But I find, and I'm not the only one that's experienced this, I don't like the bitter taste, right? Like most people, but for me, it's really strong. When I have something really bitter, it kind of like it gives me this very intense kind of physical reaction to it. The bitterness, when I need Boneset, it's not that bad. Like, I can tolerate it. And other people have noticed that as well. So, but you want to be careful. Half teaspoon is usually sufficient for Boneset. So those are my 5 favorite herbs for addressing fever. Of course, there's lots of other herbs that could have been talked about here. Some of my favorite runner-ups, ginger, fantastic. Thyme, is fantastic. Those are commonly in people's kitchens. A lot of those aromatic spices can be used. Thyme, oregano. Don't use sage because it's anti-diaphoretic, so sage is off. But even things like black pepper, rosemary, garlic, those types of things that are in people's kitchen cabinets are really good to know about, especially if you're consulting someone on the phone. It's like, hey, go through your spice cabinet. What do you got? You can make tea from those kinds of things. Osha is fantastic, of course, for coughs, but it's also circulatory stimulant, great for fever. And then I also really love blue vervain as a really excellent relaxant diaphoretic. Real quick, just some other supportive measures for fever. Hot baths, really good to drink your diaphoretic teas when you're in a hot bath. When you get out of that hot bath, do the wet sock treatment, right? Get a pair of wool socks, soak them in cold water, put them on your feet, put another thick pair of wool socks on top of that. That's a really good, simple hydrotherapy technique for fevers. I encourage people to change the bed sheets daily if you're sweating them out overnight, just because it feels better. I also am a big fan of smudging out the room, right? Put some myrrh, burn myrrh in your room, or frankincense or copal or sage or cedar, some kind of resinous aromatic herb, and just fumigate the room. Breathe that in. Even if you got a cough, just breathe it in. It's good. It's going to disinfect your lungs. You can also volatilize essential oil in a diffuser, and then open up the windows and air it out, right? If you're getting out of the room, just air the room out. There's something about changing the sheets and changing the air that I think is really important. Fast, right? Just water, maybe some electrolytes, maybe some broth. But really for me, when I get a fever, I just water fast. And then some supplements, right? Take some zinc, take some vitamin C, and then other indicated herbs, right? If you got a lot of sinus congestion, use decongestants. If you got a cough, if it's cold and damp, use stimulant expectorants. If it's dry, use demulcent expectorants. If it's constricted, use relaxant expectorants. Use some things to stimulate your immune system. Take some echinacea, take some andrographis, whatever other kind of things that you use in conjunction with those diaphoretics. But when you got a fever, taking echinacea doesn't cut it, right? Echinacea doesn't cut it. You have to use this class of remedy to address the fever, and you'll be amazed at how these speed along the febrile process. You will overcome it much more quickly. Contrarily, if you suppress the fever, you're going to turn a maybe 1-2 day fever into a 4-day fever, a 5-day fever. I really discourage people from suppressing a fever with an ibuprofen, an aspirin, a Tylenol, an NSAID of some sort. Just use those diaphoretics. So hopefully that's helpful for you. I'd be curious to hear about what are your favorite diaphoretics. If you're on YouTube where you can comment or something like that, post what your favorite diaphoretic herbs are in the comments below. We'd love to check them out. And just thank you very much for taking the time out of your life to join me here on the Plant Path. I do truly appreciate it. Again, subscribe to the podcast, to the YouTube channel, like it, all that good stuff. Share it with someone that might benefit from this. And I do appreciate you taking the time. I'm Sajah Popham. Thanks so much. And until the next time, take care and be well.